Hi everyone, welcome to another Cosmic Crone conversation with me, Marie.
And Marie. No,
Marie Tina.
me, Tina. Actually, yeah, I was Tina Marie.
Yeah. Well, this week it's fantastic. We have a great person here with us, Gabby, who's going to talk to us about shadow work. It's something that I'm a little bit familiar with. You're not as familiar with it,
It's
are
the
you?
first time I'm stumped.
Yeah. So Gabby's going to be our sort of expert on the situation, and we'll just have a chat with you. Is that all right? Welcome, Gabby.
Hiya. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Hopefully I'm expert enough.
Well, you do shadow work, don't you? Could you
Yeah.
explain to us what shadow work means to you?
I think shadow work is something that once you start getting into, it's really hard to stop. Um, Essentially it's just bringing to light the darker aspects of self. So the parts of your personality or the way in which you interact in day-to-day life that you aren't as happy with, or you try to push to the subconscious mind because of how you feel about like those parts of yourself. So like feelings such as jealousy or like possessiveness, those are aspects which are usually associated with the shadow.
All right. So when was it that you started to do shadow work?
Um, I'd say unconsciously, shadow work started coming for me around the ages of like 13, 14. Uh, I think because during those times I had like a lot going on in my life, which forced me to repress parts of myself that I wasn't happy with. And when you do repress aspects of your shadow and you don't integrate them into like who you are and accept them, um, they grow larger. So they're more prevalent in the way in which you interact in day-to-day life.
Did you know it was called shadow work then when you was
No, so I wasn't aware of like it being part of my shadow. At that time I was actually really, really frightened because the way that it manifested for me was like a little bit demonic.
Oh, can you
It'd yeah.
explain that? Can you explain that? What do you mean?
So I used to have like sleep paralysis experiences that were heavily linked to my shadow and aspects of self that I wasn't accepting. Um, like for example, my feelings towards religion at the time and how it didn't really coincide with who I was. And because I didn't want to accept the fact that I wasn't the same as like my family unit in the sense that they're all very Catholic and I had a lot to say and feel about like their beliefs that I sort of shut down or held back on. Um, they became louder in my dreams.
Ah,
yeah, you said that. I think we had a chat off screen and you was talking about how it can affect cultural beliefs.
Yeah, so there's different forms of like the shadow. Uh so there's people believe that there are like personal shadows, which is like uh how do I explain it? It's just like who you are, and then there's cultural shadows which are larger, so it's more of like a body of people and the
STEMI.
aspects of yeah. And then there's also shadows in family units too. So aspects of the family which aren't spoken about or are sort of pushed to the side because it's not acceptable to speak about those sort of interactions.
Understood. Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
like, so to get to a point where you weren't feeling the same as others that were around you
Mm.
that way.
Yeah, yeah.
What
But
did you
rather
start
than
doing? And like the question you asked, when did you know it was shadow work?
I think when I started delving into more alternate means of like spirituality, so I'd say like around eight 18, 19. So around the time like just before I moved to England.
Uh, so was you like
Um,
meditating?
I wasn't necessarily meditating, but before I moved to England, I had a sleep paralysis experience where it's a bit weird like talking about it to
It's
other
all right.
people, but
You're in a safe place, and if you want to stop talking, you can.
um
We'll stop.
I uh I had a sleep paralysis experience where I felt as though there was this shell inside of my body. So it was like my body and then this film around it, which wasn't me, and then there was me inside of that. Um, and when I started like freaking out because I felt like there was something in my body with me that wasn't me, I didn't know what to do, and so I started praying. And when I started praying, like this shell started screaming, and the scream was like terrifying. Like when I said I was so fucking like that's probably one of the most terrifying experiences I've had in sleep paralysis. Um, like even speaking about it today, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. But the moment that I stopped praying, uh, it stopped screaming and then it started laughing. And then once it started laughing, like I woke up and I was like, "What the fuck was that?" And rather than in the beginning, when I first had that dream, I was like, it was a demon. Like that was something's attached to me. Like I went to the worst possible case scenario. But when I started thinking about it a bit more, I think that that was just an aspect of myself which wanted um that attachment to religion and those like aspects of my family which weren't who I was to like be released.
So do you
Um,
realize that now?
yeah, I realize that now after doing like a meditation and I guess like reflecting back on those experiences now that I'm not in them.
But you know, you said you still found it scary or it still affects you, that, you know, talking about that bad experience.
Yeah, I think because when I like start speaking about it, like it's as though I'm being pulled back to like my body's being pulled back to a time when it hadn't integrated those parts of self into who I was. So like it's like I'm picking myself apart again. And when you're in pieces, it can be a bit like daunting.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing it with us, though, because if that's how it makes you feel, I don't want you to
Mm.
feel that way. Do you know what I mean by talking to us? But
Oh no, no,
I
not at
understand
all.
you have
Like
to go through these things to
I
actually
feel as
explain.
I feel as though shadow work as a whole is a very strenuous sort of path to go down. It's not comfortable or easy, and it's not really for everyone.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people don't. I think it's
Yeah.
confronting their fears.
Mm.
Mm.
Do you think that, or I was going to say, do you think people need professional help first to understand how to achieve what they need to within shadow work?
I think it depends on how they frame it. I think that for some people, shadow work isn't the sort of framework that they should be using to explore themselves. But for certain people, like for myself, it has been the only sort of journey that has worked. Like I've been to professionals, I've been to sleep specialists. Like I can't even I can't even think about like how many people I've tried to see in regards to like helping, I guess, come to a sense of acceptance with who I am. And they've all had just a very different mentality and how to achieve that, and none of it's really landed for me.
That's interesting because when I read up on, you know, regarding Carl Jung and he's like bringing that to the forefront and you know, saying that this is a great way for people to deal with trauma or triggers or things like that. And coming from that sort of area of his profession, but you have said something that you can go to one person and they'll put their take on it, and then you'll go to another person and they'll put their take on it. But I think you need a guide. Would you agree? If that's a professional person, to point you in the right direction, to do your shadow work.
I think that you definitely need someone to ground you through the journey. Um, Having a sort of frame can really help when it comes to like someone else's experiences with shadow work. But to have someone guide you through something that is so interpersonal can be really difficult because that would involve that other person having access to parts of yourself that you're not conscious of. Um, so I would say like the best sort of way to go through that would be to have someone who is there that you can use as a lifeline when things get too heavy for you, but to be able to go through that process on your own.
Do you think that, what I'm trying to say, do you think that people have the strength to do it on their own? You say it's quite a personal sort of format that you have to use, and whatever your situation is that you're dealing with. I don't know if everybody, personally, I don't think everybody's strong enough to keep
Oh no,
replaying.
not at all.
Yeah,
I definitely feel as though like there are a lot of people who aren't strong enough to really go through that process on their own. And that's why you find a lot of people just throughout society who are very unconscious in the way that they interact with those parts of themselves. Like they're not aware,
yeah.
and they'll likely stay that way for the rest of their lives. I also think that for some people, if they were to start getting into it, it it would completely break them from how much has accumulated that they've not worked through.
And some people are not aware that if they just step over that line, they'll get that help to navigate shadow work themselves. And also,
Mm.
I don't know if you agree, but some people don't think they have anything to work out.
like me.
I think that it's really hard to say because unless you like uh have spent a lot of time and different means to open yourself up to those aspects of self, then it's you can't really say that you don't have a shadow, if that makes sense. So it's like if you've tried to explore all avenues to connect to your shadow and they've all failed, then perhaps you don't have anything you need to work through, or perhaps it's really dug in deep and you're having to go through extra steps to get there.
So what do you actually do? What do you actually practice to do shadow work? You know,
So for myself, because I can only really speak on my own experience with delving into like the darker aspects of myself, I try and facilitate a space in a safe environment where I feel comfortable, where I essentially pull my mind back to a point of time which was very mentally distressing for me. Uh, and when I'm back in that mindset, I meditate with that and I sit with it and I see what feeds through to me. So it's like you're purposely taking yourself back to your darkest days and seeing if there's anything of like your past self during that period of time, if there's anything that it has to say to you.
Mm.
If it does have something to say to you, what relevance is it now?
Um, so the things that it has to say with you, the relevance it can have to how you interact like day to day, um, would be like how you deal with instances that may come up which could trigger those same feelings and emotions. So shadow work would be beneficial for people who have gone through, say, a lot of trauma or have a lot of triggers because it's allowing them space to understand where the root of those triggers come from and to be able to unpack it and see what it is exactly that they actually need out of a situation rather than falling back into a like state of reactivity.
So, like managing yourself,
Yeah.
giving yourself courage to maybe you might have reacted in a certain way, maybe negatively or not as strong as you are now. And if that situation came up or the thoughts came back up, would it be that you'll be able to cope better, have more courage to
Well,
what would you say? Sorry.
it would be giving that feeling a voice, a space to speak, because it's any time where you're in an interaction, like in day-to-day life, that like emotions such as like jealousy or addiction, codependency, things like that come up. They're coming from something which is deeper than just that emotion, and to really be able to unpack and move past those emotions so that they don't keep coming up like through just life, you need to sort of be able to ask yourself, what is it that you're actually wanting here? What are you trying to communicate to me? Like with jealousy, like if you're feeling extreme senses of jealousy and like you can't function at the thought of like someone you love doing something which might trigger that, it could be just a sense of what is it within myself that's making me feel jealous? Like what is it that I need to stop those emotions from surfacing? Because obviously those emotions are coming up because it's trying to communicate a need to you. And rather than being able to understand that need and bring that forward, you're falling into the emotional reaction.
And not being able to cope maybe with the intellectual sort of maybe how to deal with it on a level playing field, that there's nothing
Yeah.
coming from behind the sides that you can actually go, do you know what, I think I might be justified.
I was going to say
Yeah,
yeah,
justified, or maybe this isn't the same as what happened so many years ago. This isn't the same situation, but I'm reacting the same. Maybe I need to learn how to center myself
Yeah.
and understand that this is a different time and I'm a different person.
Exactly. And like being able to trace back to the point in time that like the root of the problem or that emotion is coming from. So like rather than allowing your emotions to guide how you interact with people in life and just go about life, you're allowing it space so that you can then use those emotions as a building block as to what it is that you need to move forward or past that trauma.
Yeah.
If you've done shadow work on one particular moment in time, is that it? You close that door, or do you go back to the same trauma again?
I think it depends on your attachment to the trauma. So if there's, sorry, my dog's trying to get in. If there's a like if it's really deep rooted, and you can't like detach from it, then there's something more than just the initial trauma that needs to be let go of, you know? So it might be a thought that has stuck with you because of the action of someone else, like, I'm not good enough. And it's like, if you're not good enough, like, why are you not good enough? And if it's why you're not good enough, then what is it that you can change to feel better about those, like, yourself, you know?
Yeah, it's like when people say, for me, sticks and stones, blah, 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 names will never hurt me. But there are things that people say, that things like, if I can put my penny's worth in, that somebody said, well, I probably am boring, but it was about a relationship, because I need to leave because you're boring. And you know what? That has gone with me through each relationship. I can't be boring. I got to do something that.
So that's why you're the way you are.
That's the way. That's the way I am. Yes, so I can understand that totally, what you're saying, because now I don't know if I've done shadow work, you see, like
without knowing,
because now I go, who are you? Weren't me. It was you thought the grass was greener, love. Do you know what I mean? And just wanted to hurt me. I understand, but I carried it for a very long time. But now I just go, really don't.
Yeah, it sounds like you've unconsciously or consciously given space for yourself to understand, like, the emotional reaction of being called boring,
that hurt,
and how that's influenced who you are. And it might be that it's influenced you in a way which hasn't really affected your shadow negatively, but brought it out more, you know? So it's like embracing the fact that you can be as crazy as you want, or as tame as you want, and it's really no one's business, you know?
It took me a long time, Gabby. You know, I'm not going, that was like about 25 years ago, you know, before you were born. And I get the concept of the shadow work anyway, but I understand that what I was doing was really, really living my life as if every minute needs to be a show.
Exciting.
Yeah. And then when it wasn't, I was unconsciously
tired.
Absolutely shattered, drained. Gabby, is there a place where you go to do your shadow work, or is it something that you do, like, you know, when nobody knows you're doing it, or do you have a ritual?
I definitely have my own ritual when it comes to shadow work. I run a pretty much all hot water bath, and I just soak. I close the door, I put some incense on, candle, and I just lay down in almost complete darkness, and I just allow whatever comes to come. Some people need to go to a certain place that might trigger emotions for them. So, like, say something traumatic happened to them in a park, so they go to a park to bring back those emotions, or like in a bar. It's very it's very different for each person.
It's very personal, isn't it?
Yeah,
personal journey, but you know, it sounds
everyone's traumas are different.
And Gabby, some people listening or watching, when you say traumas, some people think of, which they are, can be very dramatic and very chilling and very, like, so negative. And yet a trauma, I'm not trying to downplay that word, but it might be something that they didn't think, that's nothing, like me being called boring. That's why I brought it up. Do you know what I mean?
Trauma to me is anything that has stuck. So it could be something, it could just be something that someone has said without even being consciously aware that it's hurt you when you were a child, and it's just stuck, and you have taken that with you from that point on into adulthood. Um,
Or in
and
Well,
young,
it's
not even just
influenced.
childhood.
it's not just
Yeah.
childhood, I would say. Would you agree,
It
Gabby?
could
No,
be
it's not
his
just childhood. It can
relationship.
happen to you as an adult. It can happen to you at any stage in life. I think it's something which has to be managed throughout life. But I think for some people also, uh, their ability to bounce those words off them is so strong that like not much penetrates through that shield, which I think is like a little bit like Tina. I don't imagine a lot of words actually like affecting Tina in a way where it would mess with her shadow.
Very
Uh,
good. Yeah, very well said. Yeah.
but I do find that when it comes to like people who aren't as affected by the words of others, they can be very affected by their own dialogue. So it's like it's not other people's words, it's their own which play in their head on repeat.
Yeah. Would you agree
Um,
with that? I
Yeah.
would. Yeah.
it's like, like say something crazy happened in your life, and rather than thinking about all the things that like anyone involved in that instance has done to affect you, you think about all the things you could have done or you should have done or you didn't do, and those things are what sticks with you.
Now,
I
now
find
it's
that
getting.
Brad
Yeah.
I find that Brad, he's like that. He has this internal dialogue of like, oh, I didn't do that. Why didn't I do that? Or could have done this better, and it's just like
What ifs?
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that could be for a lot of people without using words like I'll come back to them, trauma and
Trauma.
trigger.
Yeah.
It's like doing something that you were made to do that doesn't sit right with you now, and you go to do it. I'm being very vague, you know what I'm talking about. Choosing something when you should be choosing something else, and now you can go, I don't, what am I worried about? I need to choose this. This is what I need to
Yeah.
do. I don't need to
Well,
listen
this
to,
is how you do it, not like that.
not like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we agonize over the fact that we've made the decision that we like shouldn't have made, or like walked down a path that wasn't the one that necessarily, like, you've realized that fuck, like I don't want to be here, pardon my French.
Oh,
um but a lot of people don't realize that you can just turn around and walk back and go in a different direction, like there's nothing stopping you.
and I think it's
um
sometimes our how we were brought up, maybe our pathways that we've uh, been made to go down. That, like you say, shadow work is so personal, so different. I would say for everybody, each and every
Mm.
person. What would you say to somebody who would like to think about doing it or would like to do shadow work? What the benefits of doing shadow work? Could you give that advice?
Yeah, I think the one piece of advice I would give to anyone going into it would be to be kind with yourself and don't be judgmental of whatever thoughts that come up. No matter how crazy they may seem, no matter how irrelevant they are, it's the fact that you see them as irrelevant, which is giving them weight. It's anything in life can affect you, regardless on how big or small. Um, and when it comes to working with the shadow, it's best to see it as a part of yourself and to stop pushing it away and like seeing it as a separate entity, because the moment that you see it as a separate entity, you're fighting against it and you're not working with it.
So embrace the shadow. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
embrace it.
Yeah.
Obviously it can be scary because like some people's shadows can be very aggressive or angry. Like for me, I had a lot of anger issues as a kid. Like I was a very aggressive child. But I internalized that because in my head I thought that that wasn't something which was socially appropriate for like my environment.
Your environment, yeah.
And so that aggression was then turned inward, and when it's turned inward, like you go through these cycles of self-hate, of all these different damaging like mentalities, and it's about accepting that this is who you are and using it as a strength rather than trying to push it away. So I started getting into martial arts. I started doing things which allowed that part of myself space to grow in a safe and positive like way.
It's an
And
environment,
now
isn't it?
I can beat people up as a result, you know.
Well, I think that's a good place to start before we get aggressive and physical. Gabby, thank you so much for being with us on a Cosmic Crone conversation. It's so interesting and so informative this last half hour or so has been. And thank you for being so honest and trusting us in this space. And I hope this podcast today will bring some answers for people and maybe bring up a lot of questions for them as well. So, Gabby, thank you so much for joining us this week. And we'll say it's goodbye from Gabby.
Bye.
Goodbye from Marie.
And goodbye from Tina.
See you next time on a Cosmic Crone conversation. Bye.
Take care, people. Bye.